probably saw that dramatic headline claiming that Portland is dying. We asked you what you thought, and a lot of you agree. But let's step back for a minute.
Things are never as bad as they seem.
Also, the oldest Oregonians can finally get their vaccines on Monday. I know, finally. Only problem is they can't actually sign up to get those shots until Monday. And in the metro area, they have to do it all online.
I don't think it's going to go well.
Plus, Dateline Dan is back with a stinky situation in East Multnomah County. Here's the story. Dateline Dan. He's tough to book. We usually can't get him. I'm glad he could make time for us tonight. I'm Dan Haggerty. Thank you for being with us. It's the end of the week. A long one. I didn't even work Monday and it feels long. This is the story. Did I say that already? All the ways that you can communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, use Twitter, and that hashtag HeyDan. Quick public service announcement for you here. I want to give you a little reminder. We got Valentine's Day coming up. I know it's, not tomorrow or anything. It's like a week or more away. But you never want to wait until the last minute. I mean, dinner and a movie this year is kind of off the table. I think, the traditional sense of that. So you might have to get a little bit more creative. So start thinking now. Flower shops are going to be slammed. Reservations for outdoor dining might already be booked. I don't want to make you nervous or anything. Frankly, I'm not telling you anything you probably don't already know. I'm just reminding you. I mean, people and businesses always start planning for big days like this weeks in advance. Otherwise, it would be like chaos. I mean, could you imagine if every restaurant and flower shop and candy shop and jewelry store made everyone try to buy that stuff on the morning of? I mean, thousands of people rushing to book the exact same thing at the exact same time. That'd be a disaster. Let's talk about the state's plan to vaccinate our oldest Oregonians. People 80 and older can start getting vaccinated on Monday. They also have to wait until Monday to sign up. And they have to do it online, where people in their 80s feel right at home. As you can imagine, this has some folks feeling a touch anxious. So anxious that charities and everyday citizens, people with really nothing to do with healthcare or Oregon's COVID response, are jumping in to help out. Here's Maggie Vespa.
So I went and I waved at her through the window like 3 days before, just because you're not allowed to go inside. So that, it wasn't speaking, but it was like the last time I interacted with her.
Like too many others amid the pandemic, Elizabeth Kennedy Midkiff said goodbye to someone she loves from a distance. Her grandmother, Patricia Grinnell, died in December in an assisted living facility in Hillsborough.
She is very sweet and amazing, and yeah, I love her a lot.
Patricia's health had been declining for a while. She tested positive for COVID hours before she passed.
It was really, really hard the first few days. And then I think right now, like my family and I, we've just been trying to honor her.
For Elizabeth and her husband, David, that now means turning their attention to people Patricia's age who are eligible to get the vaccine starting next week. Elizabeth knows all too well how overwhelmed many of them will be snagging an appointment online.
She was 95, had never had a computer, and didn't know how to use a computer.
So this week, the couple went old school, drawing up these flyers to pass out to seniors in their neighborhood. On it, they'll write their name, phone number, and how they're willing to help, perhaps by helping a senior register for an appointment or driving them to it. They're encouraging friends, family, and anyone else to do the same.
We're just trying to help and do a small piece.
It's needed, probably more than they know, says Suzanne Washington.
We're getting lots of calls and questions to our volunteers.
She's the CEO of Meals on Wheels People, which delivers hot meals to homebound seniors, many of whom have started asking those making the deliveries if, come Monday, they can help them sign up for an appointment. Washington said Meals on Wheels is weighing starting a program to do just that. In fact, demand is so high, the group is working with Washington County Public Health and TriMet to set up a phone number seniors can call for help making appointments and even arrange transportation to vaccine sites. They hope to have these options up and running as soon as possible, because when it comes to making vaccine appointments online, Washington says everyone agrees.
I think if it all stays online, it's going to be extremely difficult. We have been doing tech projects with our older adults for a couple of years now, and it is super challenging. For many of them are quite talented and it won't be a problem. But especially the oldest part of our population, very difficult.
Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
Now, last night we spent a lot of time here on the story holding our leaders accountable for the vaccine rollout. I got this email from Thane after the show. He said, "Hey, Dan, I like this story a lot, watch every night, but I'm really tired of hearing how many people aren't getting the vaccine yet. There's no focus on the limited supply, the challenges of distributing a vaccine that is in short supply, or encouraging people to be patient. I'll continue to watch, but skip the griping about what's not working." Thane, I do hear you. Trust me. You know, I have my personal feelings and opinions and the things I talk about with my friends and family, and then the obligations I have as a journalist to hold people accountable and do the types of stories that we do. But I feel you, man. We do spend a lot of time talking about the problems, and we should do a really good job of highlighting what is going well, because there are things going well. And we should talk about cases and deaths in that light. Oregon and Washington are both doing relatively well in those areas compared to the rest of the country. Out of all 50 states, for instance, Oregon ranks 47th in most cases per capita and 46th in most deaths per capita. So we're at the front of the pack there. Similar story in Washington, right? They rank 46th in cases per capita and 44th in deaths per capita. Another thing that's going relatively well at this point is the number of people getting vaccinated, so the amount of shots that are actually going into people's arms. So despite issues with the rollout that we have talked about several times on this show, the numbers behind me here do not lie. More than 389,000 Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to more than 9% of the population. That puts Oregon around the top 10 of all states for percentage of people vaccinated. All right, that's pretty good. Now, we haven't gotten an update from Washington today, but yesterday more than 627,000 people have gotten at least their first dose, which works out to be 8.3% of that state's population, which is still around the top third of all states. There you go. Some positive news. Now let's turn to this. So Portland is dying, apparently. Forbes published an op-ed from a Lake Oswego man that says as much, painting a grim picture of the Rose City, though the title seems to doubt itself a bit. Death of a City, the Portland story? It features the picture of a protester on fire from a Molotov cocktail and tells of a region stricken by overpriced homes, civil unrest, homelessness, and volcanoes. Some of you took issue with this piece. Katie said, "I don't think so. LOL. The media chooses what to share. I live in Newburgh, but used to live in Southeast. I've visited since we were labeled a, quote, war zone. I don't see it that way. I see the city I grew up in evolving." Jason said, "Not anywhere close to dead. Downtown will get fixed back up. Outlying areas are still fine. Parts of the east side look rough, but that's always been the case." Now, an economic expert I talked to for some context on this sort of thing actually agrees with those viewers, right? John Taponia with Eco Northwest told me this.
Things are never as bad as they seem when things are bad. And I think right now at this moment is not the right point to sort of sit down and say, you know, does Portland have a future? We are the most affordable major city on one of the most desirable coasts in the world. And we get to look at Mount Hood.
A lot more of it than that, and John has talked about that as well. But look, I think that a lot of you think his outlook is a bit optimistic, like Corey, for instance, said, "I'm a native. I have never seen it look this disgusting. I used to call it my city. Now I'm embarrassed to live here." Mackenzie said Portland was a fairy tale, beautiful, intriguing, exciting, and romantic. And today it is a living nightmare. But I want to talk about the nightmarish things for just a moment, because I think we all can't wait to wake up from the nightmare that started about a year ago. Every major city in the country got hit hard by the pandemic, every single one. Now, Portland got hit especially hard for a few reasons, but one of them has to be the strict, very strict rules in the state when it comes to COVID regulations, some of the strictest in the nation. And those rules have closed some businesses for good, but they also saved a lot of lives. We are way below the national average for deaths and way, way below the states that stayed open. But it wasn't just that. Okay, it's not just the pandemic. We also have the riots. I say have because they are still happening regularly. I mean, for months they were national and international news, but we still have fencing around our government buildings. Our businesses are still boarded up. The ones that aren't are still being vandalized on certain nights. I mean, it is so bad that some insurance companies won't cover local shops anymore. The trash and the graffiti is overwhelming. I mean, literally overwhelming. The city agency in charge of it said that they can't keep up and they are running out of money. Crime has skyrocketed. Shootings have doubled, record numbers, so have homicides. These are the types of crimes that I'm talking about, too, that affect entire communities. Last week, we had 7 shootings in 15 hours. One person died, others got shot, bullets went into a home with kids inside, and cars were actually racing down the street, shooting back and forth at each other. Then there's homelessness, which is what was already a big problem. Right? But at this point, it has consumed certain areas of downtown. I mean, it's hard to tell, and the statistics, we just don't have them yet, but it is hard to tell if more people have actually become homeless or if people are just consolidating in more visible areas. But the suffering on our streets has never been more apparent. Our mayor got punched last month outside of a restaurant, and then a few weeks later, he pepper sprayed a guy outside of another restaurant. Our mayor. I mean, and I haven't even mentioned the wildfires and what climate scientists have to say about the possibilities of more of those in this region of the country. So is Portland dying? I don't think it's fatal, but these symptoms definitely need attention, and immediately. We're working on some coverage right now. We hope to explore solutions in the weeks to come. If you have any ideas to guide this coverage, I know you always do, you know how to get a hold of us. And don't forget to use the hashtag #HeyDan. Now, speaking of trash, someone has been dumping human waste in East Multnomah County, a lot of it, for years, and they can't seem to catch them. It's a real mystery. And when we cover real mysteries on this show, we turn to our real mystery reporter, Dateline Dan.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Few of us have. A malodorous mystery in East Multnomah County.
It's been going for about 2 years, and quite frankly, it's starting to drain our resources.
Drain indeed, because someone isn't flushing.
It seems to happen either at dusk or the early morning hours.
The early morning hours, using this scenic landscape as their own personal toilet.
Well, the pattern seems to be about 3 sacks per week.
It makes you think, just who is this poop dumper, and what do they want from us?
Maybe they're sending a signal either to the public or maybe to Multnomah County.
Regardless, how long will this stinky crime go on?
And we've been out here all hours of the days and nights trying to catch these guys. Sooner or later, we'll catch them. Just a matter of time.
For the story, I'm Dateline Dan.
The metro area's only Republican in Congress wants to make sure you know she doesn't back those crazy conspiracy theories.
That is not our party. We are not going to traffic in that.
But she also doesn't want to stop someone who does believe in that stuff from getting a vote. And hey, what's going on with Portland's infamous Red House? Seems like things calmed down a bit until you read this big lawsuit that says not so much. When the story continues. Welcome back. I always go through all your comments and emails during the break. Keep them coming at thestory@kgw.com. Use that hashtag #HeyDan on Twitter. Now, all week, we've been following the workplace harassment investigation into Oregon State Representative Diego Hernandez. The House Conduct Committee has met each day to hear from 3 women who work at the Capitol, and each say they dated Hernandez briefly, but that he started to harass them when they tried to break up with him, creating a hostile workplace environment. Now, some lawmakers have already called for Hernandez to resign, like House Speaker Tina Kotek. But this morning, Governor Kate Brown chimed in right in the middle of her weekly press conference on the vaccine rollout. So a lot of people were watching.
The women who came forward and shared their stories are courageous and brave. Let me be very clear. If this were any other workplace, Representative Hernandez would have already been shown the door. While the legislative process will proceed to address findings, quite simply, His behavior is unacceptable for anyone, never mind an elected official. He should resign immediately.
Quite a statement, not mincing words there, safe to say. A couple of hours later, the Conduct Committee met again and they unanimously voted for a resolution to expel him from the legislature. That now goes to the full House for a vote. Now, Hernandez is still claiming that there were big problems with this whole investigation. His attorney, for instance, released this statement saying, quote, "The committee is making findings of fact and rulings under Rule 27 without considering the evidence that Rep. Hernandez has presented. You are the jury appointed to decide the facts under Rule 27. What kind of jury would willingly refuse to hear the evidence?" By the way, Rule 27 refers to the Capitol's new procedures for dealing with hostile workplace allegations. They were put in place after former Senator Jeff Cruz, seen there, was accused of sexually harassing interns a few years ago. So, like I said, the resolution to kick Hernandez out now goes to a floor vote. And it needs 2/3 majority to pass, which in this case is 40 votes. Late this afternoon, a group of 26 Democrats in the House said that they wanted Hernandez to leave, along with Senate President Peter Courtney. So we'll keep you posted if Hernandez resigns, if he doesn't, or if the House votes to expel him. All right. Talk about Congress for just a moment. I'm sure you've heard about Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia who was or is big into QAnon. Well, this week the House of Representatives has voted to strip her of her committee assignments. 11 Republicans voted yes on that. Southwest Washington Republican Jamie Herrera Butler was not one of them. On the same day of the vote, though, she also released a statement calling Taylor Greene's conspiracy beliefs, quote, insane, and strongly denounced her. So today we talked about why she still voted not to pull her off of those committees despite feeling the way she does.
So there was no actual, so in terms of like legislative impact, it didn't change her legislative impact. I actually would have argued, again, Nancy Pelosi was taking my advice, I would have left her on the education committee. And if I were them, I would have pulled together some hearings on school shootings. And I'd have had people come in and testify, and I would have had her face the truth of a situation. And I would allow her to ask questions and make her points to them. Why are we afraid to do that? I think they did greater, if the Democrats' goal was to disempower her, it was a mistake. I think it would have been more effectual in bringing change to how she's operated, to have her face-to-face in a hearing on school shootings and defending her ideas. Like, I'm not saying she has to just take it all, but that I think when we run from telling the truth, I mean, she's still going to have just as much ability to vote yes or no on those same pieces of legislation as she would have on the committee.
So instead of getting her off the committees, pull back the curtain and make her kind of face the music on her own, see what she actually thinks on these topics.
And let her share what she thinks and let people, I mean, this is Congress. Why in the world wouldn't we have an actual debate on an issue? Like relegating it to social media and duking it out, I don't know how that gets us any closer to doing the work of the American people.
Now, you might remember Herrera Butler also voted to impeach President Trump. In January, she was one of only 10 Republicans to do so, and her speech on the floor got some national attention. She also got some flack from supporters of President Trump, and she stands by her vote still. We had a long conversation today about where the Republican Party goes from here.
I can tell you I'm not going anywhere. My goal is to just reestablish who we are based on the principles we've always espoused. I'm not going to let people push me out who say because I didn't swear fealty to a personality that means I'm no longer a Republican. No, I actually think we should turn that a bit and say, prove to us you understand the values of the Republican Party and you want to fight for them. Defending the Constitution tends to be chief top of there. But time will tell. I can't control what other people are going to do. And I do think we're at an inflection point. I do think we're in a place we haven't been, at least certainly in a generation. I just have this, I really do have, it's almost an unwavering faith in the American people, though, and in a vast majority of Republican voters. Because in there, whether or not there are some that are frustrated, they're going to do the right thing for the right reasons. Was it Churchill, or it's the quote that he gets attributed to, that Americans will do that after they've exhausted all of their options? That could be true. My hope is it's not.
Now, we're going to be talking a lot more about the future of the Republican Party, especially here in our region, here on The Story next Monday. In the meantime, my full interview with Jamie Herrera Butler is on the KGW YouTube page. I encourage you to take a listen. Do you remember back in December, we spent a lot of time talking about the Red House on Mississippi? So, long story short, a black and indigenous family was evicted from their house. Protesters then staged a big occupation to keep them from getting kicked out. It was a really big story for a while, and they had barricades set up and everything. But then those barricades came down, and we just kind of sort of stopped hearing about it. And a story that we think is worth your time. It's from the Oregonian, and they have a whole follow-up on this situation. The owner of an apartment building in that area is suing the owner of the empty lot that is right next door to the Red House. And he says the owner of that lot, not the Red House specifically, but that lot, they aren't doing anything about an encampment that is now on that property. His tenants, he says, are being harassed and threatened. Basically, he says these people are ruining the neighborhood. It also has a good deep dive into what else has happened since the protesters all went home, because as it turns out, not everyone went home. The story is not over. We plan to do some follow-up reporting on it as well, but in the meantime, we think you should check this out. Whew. Quite a week, quite an end of the show. We're going to talk about some stuff right after the break that they're a little nicer than what we've been dealing with. We're going to take a nice trip to Oaks Bottom when we finish the story next. Welcome back. It's the end of the week. On a Friday night, I like to just, you know what I mean? So we want to end tonight with a kind of a peaceful story, a little palate cleanser, so to speak. John Goodwin spoke with a local nature photographer who spends his time at Oaks Bottom Wildlife Refuge. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.
I love to come here and photograph, experience nature, and it's healing.
Stepping into Oaks Bottom Wildlife Refuge, nature photographer Jonathan Swanson contrasts the calm surroundings with the excitement of what he finds.
I think it's a necessity for people.
The distractions from daily life are his focus.
There's literally 200 species of birds that share this small pond. Bald eagles, bittern. I've seen more birds today than probably all year.
Touting the diversity of the refuge, Swanson seriously undersells his photography skills. The shots he takes, he loves to share.
Give people something to see that might distract them or give them some kind of balance or peace.
Being familiar with most of the birds at Oaks Bottom, what basically fell out of the sky last week made Swanson do a double take.
A very graceful interaction, and I observed them almost dancing, and it was almost like a ballet. They're called tundra swans. They're also called whistling swans. I've never seen them here, and I was able to photograph them. I made a little video, and I put some music to it, some of my own original piano music.
These birds are breeding in the Arctic and along the coast of Alaska. So it's pretty cool that they flew probably a minimum of 1,500 miles to be here.
Brody Cass-Talbot is an educator with Portland Audubon. Tundra swans, he says, are a common winter species, but they usually prefer larger habitats like Sauvie Island.
They can live, up to 25 years, which is an eternity for birds, and they mate for life, which is also unusual.
My parents have been together almost 70 years, so I thought there was some symbolism with that.
Turning his escape into inspiration, Swanson hopes this captured moment can help others retreat to their own place of refuge.
I've seen different bird species sharing the same space. For the most part, they all get along. And I thought, well, that's something that we can certainly learn.
In Southeast Portland, John Goodwin, KGW News.